Hi everyone, this is Molly Holder, product owner for Composer 2. I just want to do a quick mic check, make sure people are hearing me, and then I'm going to give people maybe another minute or so to join, and then we'll get started. So can somebody tell me that they hear me? Just raise your hand or write a question, or can everybody hear me? Testing, testing. Hello, can everyone hear me?
Oh, it's probably because you're not in broadcast mode.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, this is Molly Holder. I am the Composer 2 product owner, and thanks for joining us. I just want to do a quick mic check, make sure you guys are hearing me, and then we'll get started in about a minute. We'll give people another minute to join in. So can people hear me? Can you just let me know in the questions section?
All right, welcome everyone to our Composer 2 playlist widget sprint review. I am Janine Williamson. Thank you for joining us today. And I have with me here Molly Holder, the product manager for Composer 2, and Molly will be leading us in our webinar today. If you have any questions, please enter them in the chat window. We will set aside some time to answer them. So enter your questions along the way. All right, Molly, take it away.
Great. Thanks everyone for joining us. We're really excited to show you what we've been working on for the past several months. This is our playlist widget redesign review, and this is a oft requested feature. So we're really excited to share this with you today. So I'm just going to start off by giving a quick introduction to how we got here, where we've been, and then go straight into some demos. This webinar is going to rely pretty heavily on live demos, so watch closely, and I'll show you all of the features of our new widgets. So I'm going to demo our playlist widget. Go back into presentation mode. I'm going to demo our playlist widget and our daily widget and our now playing widget, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can configure your metadata for those widgets. Then we'll talk about, I don't know why this keeps knocking me out of presentation mode. Bear with me 1 second. We'll try this one more time. We might have to just go through this in the other mode, but we'll see. So then we'll talk about the release timeline, what's coming and when, and then we'll have a section for Q&A. So please do submit your questions, and Janine's going to be watching those questions. So the widget redesign project, we undertook this project because the design was outdated, and we heard from stations that we needed more flexibility in metadata handling, and there were usability issues with the current playlist widget, both from a station perspective and from an end user perspective. So what we did was we hired an independent usability researcher to come in and do a study for us. And we talked to a bunch of stations, and we also talked to some end users so we could get a full picture of what's going on with the current playlist widget. And we reviewed all the historical feature requests and bug reports that you guys have sent in over the course of the playlist widget's existence. So I just wanted to make sure that you know that none of this was done in a vacuum. We have been paying attention to all of the requests and all of the bug reports and everything that people said in a targeted interview and survey with this usability researcher, and we came up with lots of changes. So thank you for all of your input. So these are the stations I wanted to give a big shout out to for participating in our usability study. So thank you so much for doing that. We really couldn't do this without you. This happened last summer, and we surveyed a bunch of people, and I want to give a special shout out to the stations who gave me some end users to talk to, so we could talk to some people who are actually using this thing out in the wild. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump right into the playlist widget. These are some of the requirements that we heard from stations and from end users. We needed to update the design. We needed better metadata identification, so what all this metadata is. We needed to differentiate between the metadata for classical programs and non-classical programs. Better search capacity, more intuitive for the end users, and lots more. So there's too much to actually even write here, so I'll talk to you about how we approached this. So essentially, we just redesigned the entire playlist widget for you, and I'd like to show that to you now. So you're all familiar with this screen. This is our Composer Admin Widget Builder. This screen should be mostly familiar to you, but the new playlist widget is actually featured here on the left-hand side. And I'm going to pop this out so that you can look at it in more detail, but I wanted to show this to you first. So the configuration is exactly the same. If you were to pop this into your website, you would copy and paste this iframe code and then paste it right into your website, but we will be releasing this in such a way that you won't have to do anything to see the new widget. The new widget will be a flip the switch implementation. So the configure box is still here. You'll see we've removed a couple things because we've made all of the configurability, we built that right into the widget, and I'll talk you through how that works. But you can still scope it to a specific program, or you can scope it to all programs. And then obviously you can change the height of the widget in pixels. So let's pop out to a bigger version of the widget. So this is live right now, actually. This is on my personal demo site, my personal demo station on Composer. And this is what the new widget will look like. So as I said, it can be configured to one program or all programs. And this is showing a configured widget to all programs. So this will give the end user the ability to actually drill down into a specific program here in this drop-down menu. This was a really big thing with the end users. People wanted to be able to search across all programs instead of searching just one program, and they had a hard time finding a way to do that with the old widget. So just to note that it's great to have your single program listed on your program page, but it's also great for end users to have a widget that shows all the programs so they can have a comprehensive search function. So one thing we heard a lot over the course of our research and pouring through all the feedback that we've gotten is that the showing results in reverse chronological order was really confusing. So what we did was change the order of how songs appear to chronological. So when you first load the widget, the very first thing you'll see is if there is a now playing song, it'll be highlighted here and will load at relative eye level. So you'll never have to scroll to see the most recently played song or the now playing song. And then in order to see historical songs that played before that, you scroll up. So this will happen across all filters and all displays. You'll always scroll up to see historic songs. And then if you find yourself in some song in the history, so say this song right here on 414, scroll down to see anything that came after that. So that's a big change, but it's one that we think is highly anticipated. Just a note that no future tracks will display. That is because we are legally obligated to not display any future tracks for the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. So that's not a change, it's just a note so that people are aware. We also implemented what we're calling infinite scroll. So infinite scroll means that it'll load a certain amount of songs when you first come to the widget, plenty of songs in fact. But if you get to the top of that result set, as I'm about to get to right here, it'll automatically load more songs. So this reduces the need for any clunky pagination. So that works in both directions. It'll infinitely scroll until it reaches the end of the result set, meaning the now playing song or if there are no more songs to display. Another thing we heard was that the playlist widget was hard to sort of scan, hard to see what was happening in just one view. So what we tried to do is make it a lot more readable. So you'll see that we increased the size of the title of the song. We increased the size of the date and time here. That was also oft requested. And we included information about the program that this song is playing from. Also, if you scroll through, you'll notice that there are these bars here, these separator bars. And what these show you, if you're scoped to all programs, it shows you where one program ends and the other begins. So this is something that we were excited to do because the old playlist widget was just showing a whole bunch of songs and no sort of focal point where you're skipping through program to program. If you're scoped to one program, like I'll do here, I'll scope to just Acoustic Cafe. Those separators change to be date separators. So you can see easily when one day begins and another day ends. So hopefully that'll make it a little bit easier to scroll through, to scan, to read, and find things quickly as you're browsing. So browsing is improved, but let's talk about searching. So searching and filtering is something that we weren't doing to the best of our abilities in the old playlist widget, and we've really, really improved on that. And I hope that you will agree. So as you see at the top here, we have the all programs dropdown, if you scope this to all programs. We also have a keyword search, we have a date search, and a time search. So one thing to note about all of these filters is they all work together. In our old playlist widget, you could use a date and time search, or you could use a keyword search, and that was confusing to some end users. So what we've done here is made all these filters work together seamlessly, and I'll walk you through how that works. So a date search, if I go on the dates and I click on, say, April 8th, the date search will show me all songs that played on April 8th, starting with the very first song that played that day. So it localizes us in time to that very first song, but if a user, say, isn't sure when that song played, we don't want to limit them to just that time. So you can scroll up to see songs that happened before that, and you can scroll down to see songs that happened after that. So this gives users a little bit more flexibility in terms of finding something that they know they heard, but they weren't sure exactly when. The same is true for the time filter. So if I'm on April 8th here and I search time and I want to go to, say, the afternoon on that day, and I click 2 p.m. and I go, it will locate you as close to possible as where the closest song to 2 p.m. played that day, which on this day was 6:01 p.m. for my test station. Time, just to note this, the time filter will be grayed out unless there's a date here, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to just search by any random time. We didn't know exactly what to show you if you're just searching by time. One thing I do want to note here in comparison to the old widget is that time search in the old widget was actually an end time search, which was really confusing to all users, station users, end users, everybody. So if I wanted to, for example, find a song that played at 2 p.m. on April 8th, I would have to search on 3 p.m. and then look backwards. We have remedied that by introducing a start time and also relative time so that you can look before and after the time that you enter. Keyword search is another area where we've made a ton of improvements. So the biggest piece of feedback we received from stations and from end users was to make the keyword search, quote, more like Google. So while I can't say that I have replicated Google's algorithm, I can say that we have really improved this search functionality. So if I search the playlist, for example, for Molly, I will get all results about Molly. Title, album, artist, program, it will search all these fields for Molly. But what's really cool is that I can also search for, say, flogging Molly in quotes, and it will bring me results just for flogging Molly. Or I can search for example, Molly, but not flogging Molly, and it'll give me all the Molly results that don't include flogging Molly. So you can also use operators like and or and plus and minus, all of that. So hopefully that will make it a little bit easier to come to this playlist widget and find exactly what it is you're looking for. We've prioritized the result set so that you won't get results that are very esoteric, let's say. And also we have eliminated the results for very common words. So words like the won't necessarily bring something back. So if you type the Beatles, for example, you won't get all songs with the word the and all songs with the word Beatles anymore, which was something that was happening in the old playlist widget. And finally, we added a print button. This also was something that was very, very oft requested. And I just want to talk really quickly about what the print button will show. If you press the print button, it will print for you everything that is loaded into the playlist widget at this time. So you'll see right there on the right, the scroll bar is pretty big, so there's not that many results here. But if I kept going, the infinite scroll would load more results, right? So every result that gets loaded into the playlist widget will eventually print if you hit the print button. That means that what you can do is select something like Acoustic Cafe and no keyword search and one specific date, let's say April 13th, and no time, and hit go, and you can print the entire playlist that happened on that day from start to finish on that program, which is a feature that was really desired across the board. So there you have it with the playlist widget, and I'll talk a little bit about the metadata too. So playlist widget metadata is classical metadata, non-classical metadata, and optional metadata. The defaults for classical will be title, composer, and album, and then these other three, ensembles, conductor, and soloist, if those are available in the metadata that comes through from the music library that we're searching, so archive or iTunes. The defaults for non-classical is title, album, and artist. Optional metadata, which I'll talk you through in a few slides, includes album art, label, catalog number, host, and custom fields. And what this means is you can decide whether or not you want to show that optional metadata on a program or even on an episode level. So we'll talk about that in a minute. The daily widget, since we were doing all this work on the playlist widget, we also wanted to bring into line and into design, into the same design that we did with the playlist widget, the daily widget and the now playing widget. So the requirements for the daily widget were update the design, similarly to the playlist widget, also include better metadata identification, and make appropriate metadata for classical and non-classical music visible on the widget. So we redesigned the playlist inside of the daily widget. We included better metadata labeling and inclusion of episode notes, which is something that people were requesting a lot. Also, classical metadata differs from the non-classical metadata in the playlist inside the daily widget. So let's go out and talk about how that looks in the actual Composer admin. So here we are again on the widget admin page, and this is the daily widget. It should look pretty familiar to you. We didn't change the design much of this part of the widget at all. So what we're really talking about is the playlist embedded inside the daily widget. So if I open up, say, Molly's Classical and More show on the playlist here, you can see that the design has been updated to match the design of the playlist widget. We've labeled all of the metadata, which is very important, especially for classical music. In classical programming, it's often, end users are often having trouble discerning what is the composer, what's the soloist, what's the label, what these pieces of metadata mean. So we've labeled all of those for ease of use. And all of your affiliate links are here too. So this is what the daily widget will look like. One thing I did want to bring your attention to is the fact that we are showing episode notes now on the daily widget. The daily widget is the only place where episode notes will be available. So if you configure them to show, which I'll show you later, episode notes will display, just like the playlist displays, next to the program title here. So here's episode notes for this actual episode. So hopefully this is a little bit easier to use, a little bit more readable. Results are larger. They call into your attention all of the important metadata. And there's not that much to show about the daily widget, just to show you that we brought it all back into line with the same design as the playlist widget. As far as metadata goes on the daily widget, it looks very similar to the playlist widget. We have defaults for classical, defaults for non-classical, and the optional metadata. The only difference here is that the episode notes will display on the daily widget only, if you configure them to. And again, I'll show you how to configure metadata in a few slides. So the now playing widget is the last widget that we spent time redesigning, and it's very similar to the other widgets. We needed to update the design. We needed better metadata identification. We needed appropriate metadata for classical and non-classical. But we also needed to be cognizant of the fact that stations need to incorporate this widget into their existing sites. And I'll talk about that in a minute when I demo what we did. So we completely redesigned it. We have better metadata labeling. We differentiated classical and non-classical, and we're giving stations the option to use the existing version of the Now Playing widget or the new version of the Now Playing widget. So what does that mean? Let me show you. So this is the Now Playing widget as it exists currently. You should be pretty familiar with this. It shows the currently playing song, album artwork, shows your affiliate links, and what's coming up next. So the version 2 style of, so let me back up. The Now Playing widget doesn't really affect core publisher stations. This is because core publisher stations have the Now Playing block that's built custom by core publisher that calls our API and pulls in all of that data for you. The changes that I'm showing to you are for people who have actually implemented this Now Playing widget the way that they implement the playlist widget or the daily widget, by copying this iframe code and plopping it into their site code. So I think the stations who are on the line who do this, you know who you are, but just to say, core publisher stations, this probably does not apply to you. So if you do use this Now Playing widget and you want to see what we've done for this version 2, click on this Use version 2 style box in the configure box. So I'm going to click there first. The first thing you see is just a plain bare bones information about the program that's playing and what's up next. So this is option 1 of version 2. Option 1 of version 2. This is the option to not show the currently playing song. And the reason we built this is so that you have some flexibility around how large the Now Playing widget is. I know that it may, if you were to configure, if you were to use the new Now Playing widget, you may have to reconfigure the layout of your site a little bit to get it to fit. So this will hopefully allow you to show some version, one version of the new Now Playing widget without having a huge change in the layout or the space that we're using. So when I do show the currently playing song in the Now Playing widget, I'm going to increase the height of the widget here too because it's a little bit larger. This is what it will look like. So it's a little bit bigger. We're highlighting the title of the track. We're labeling all of the metadata. We're showing what program it comes from and what time it played, and also your affiliate links, of course. But it's a little bit larger. It looks a lot more like the daily schedule and the playlist widget, but we didn't want to force this on anyone. So in order to use this new Now Playing widget, you'll have to go into your admin of Composer, copy and paste this iframe code, and then put it into your site at the place where it is appropriate to have it. I didn't want to make people have to reconfigure their website layouts in order to fit the new Now Playing in there. So there's not a lot to say about this either now that you've seen the design across the board. Just know that you'll have to configure it down here to show your version 2 and then copy and paste this iframe code if you want to install it. So Now Playing widget metadata includes the same defaults for classical and non-classical, but no optional metadata ever shows in the Now Playing widget. That's because we wanted to standardize the size and the look and feel of that Now Playing widget. We didn't have a lot of height to play with, so we are showing only the default metadata. Okay, so I've been talking about configuring metadata as we went through all of these demos, and I want to talk a little bit about what that means. So a lot of what we heard, both in tickets that have been submitted and in our usability research, was that stations want more flexibility of what metadata displays on the widgets. So what we did was build in permissions level metadata configurability. And what this means is that we've given station admins the ability to configure metadata at the program level. So across the board for all the programs, station admins will have access to configure the metadata that displays. Admins can also choose whether or not to grant permissions to hosts to be able to configure the metadata for their episodes. So program level and episode level metadata configurability is available, but it is limited to the people who have permissions to see them. So admins have program level configurability and hosts have episode level configurability if admins have granted them that access. So let's look at what that's going to look like. So I'm going back out to Composer here. And the first thing I want to do here is go to the calendar, because we'll take a look at what's currently playing. What's currently playing, what time is it? 2:25, is this program, Molly's Mix. So I'm going to open up Molly's Mix program page. And this should look pretty familiar to you. This is where you put your airtimes in. This is where you configure all of this metadata up here. And we've added this new box at the bottom of the page called Configure Metadata Display for Widgets. And what this will do is allow you to decide what metadata will show on each of those widgets, the way that I showed you earlier in the demos. So you'll be able to choose album art label, catalog number, host, custom fields, and episode notes. A couple things to note here. One, episode notes only display on the daily widget. And two, no optional metadata will show on the now playing widget. So this metadata applies to the daily widget and to the playlist widget only. We also are giving station admins the ability to apply these choices across the board to all of their programs if they want to. This is so you don't have to go in program by program and configure each piece of metadata individually for that program. So if I wanted this to always display for all my programs across the board, I would just click this, apply the above choices to all programs. And down here is where you allow your hosts to configure metadata for their episodes. So if you click this, hosts will be able to configure that metadata as well. So let's go look at what is currently playing on this channel. So I'm going to go back to the calendar, and I'm going to look at the episode. Here we are on the episode page. And it's 2:27. So the song that's currently playing here, I'm going to make this a little bit longer so it keeps playing for us, is this Silhouettes by Colony House. I have the program configured right now to show custom fields. So if I added a custom field to this currently playing song by hitting add field, custom field, this is a custom field. And then I save it and we go out to the widget. Let's make sure that we're, oh yes. I should be able to see that custom field here. Yes. Maybe we have a little bit of work to do here so this displays correctly. But this is essentially what you will see. This is a custom field. But if I go back into the program page for Molly's Mix program and edit that so that custom fields are not visible, make sure after you click anything in this configure metadata display box that you go up to the top here and click save in order to apply those changes. And then I go out to the playlist widget. The custom field is not displayed anymore. So that's how that works. I also want to show you what happens if you grant permissions to your hosts to edit metadata for their programs. So I'm going to go back into the Molly's Mix program. And I'm going to click Allow Host to configure metadata for their episodes. Again, hop up here, click Save, make sure it applies. Then, when I come down to that episode, what I'll see as I get in there is this new link up here, Configure Metadata Display for Widgets. So what this will do, if I click there, is show this new box to the hosts of that episode, where they will have the ability to choose what shows on the widgets the same way that the hosts, that the station admins have for the programs. So anything that is configured here in this episode level is local to this episode only. So these choices apply just to this episode on this date during this time only. Hosts will have to go in and configure this on an episode by episode basis. Also, if this configurability here differs from what the overall program configuration says, this will take precedence until the host's access is revoked. And once the host access is revoked, the program level settings will kick in again. So that's essentially how the metadata configuration works. It's two new areas that we've included. It's this one on the episodes page and the configure metadata display box on the program page as well. Okay. So that is what you are going to see when we release these features. We're planning to release these features on Wednesday, April 22nd. And what will happen that day is you will see the new metadata configurability options that I just showed you in your admin side of Composer 2. Stations who have the daily and the playlist widgets on their sites will see the new versions of those widgets automatically where they're embedded on core publisher sites and on sites that have copied and pasted the iframe code to put on their sites. There will be no work required by stations to make that switch. We will automatically flip that switch for you, and you'll see those as soon as it launches. And as I said, V2 of the Now Playing widget will become available in Composer 2 and with the new embed code. And stations who want to switch over to the new version 2 of Now Playing widget can copy and paste that code into their sites and test it and make sure it fits where they have it currently installed. So we're really excited to get that out to you. And that's it. I'd like to open it up to questions. I think Janine is saying she's got some.
Yes, we do. All right. So to go back a little bit, just some basics about the widgets. Are the new widgets responsive?
Yes, the new widgets are responsive. The iframes are responsive, so you will be able to resize them as you please.
Wonderful. With the version 2 style of the Now Playing widget, will we be able to copy and paste that info into a promo block for CP responsive? Or will there be a pre-packaged block that gets offered to us?
That is a question I do not know the answer to, but what I will do is round up with our core publisher product owner, who is fairly new. His name is Justin Brown, and I will ask him that. Definitely you should be able to copy and paste it. Well, I shouldn't say definitely. Let me talk to him, but I'm not sure about there being a custom block created for this. I will find out.
All right. If there isn't a song currently playing, though we've checked the Include Now Playing box, will it show the most recent song, possibly hours ago, or will it disappear?
It will show you. I'm just going to hop back out to the widget page here. It will show you this. It will show you what the program that's playing and then the program that's up next. It will only show Now Playing songs if there is an actual Now Playing song playing.
If we have affiliate links turned off in our current version of Composer, can we continue to do this with the new widget?
Keep them off. Is that right? Yes. So just so everybody knows how to control that, the way to control your affiliate links is to go into settings here and look at your affiliate codes. And if you have these affiliate code boxes filled out, we will show those affiliate links on your widgets. But if you don't, we will not show any affiliate links at all.
Can you show a display list of the most streamlined view? Just artist, song, and time.
Sure. So let me go out to the playlist widget right now. So this is the most streamlined view of the playlist widget. As you can see, well, actually, no, that's not true. It's showing you the label. So I could go in and configure this to get rid of the label, but essentially this is what you would see minus this one piece of metadata here. So you'll see the title, the artist, and the album. And this is for non-classical songs. For classical pieces, you will see potentially more metadata because we will include things like ensemble, soloist, and something else. I can't remember right now, but I can go back to the slides and tell you. Conductor. That's the one.
All right. Has the editing been improved that will allow dragging songs to their correct position more than once? And when editing times for entries, will the playlist no longer rearrange all songs and give them new times played?
I think this is a bug that we're talking about. I am aware of the dragging bug. The dragging bug, this is hopefully not dated knowledge, but the dragging bug, it will allow you to drag once and then you won't be able to drag again. But if you refresh the page, it'll allow you to drag as many times as possible. So that is definitely a bug that's in our backlog that we're planning to fix. As far as songs reordering themselves, that was a bug that I had seen maybe a couple months ago, and I would be interested to know if it's still happening. So please submit a ticket if you do see that happening, and we will address it.
Will there be a memory for entries not identified and manually entered?
Unfortunately, there won't. That next to the playlist widget, that is also a very often requested feature. It's something that's really challenging to build for us. It requires, I won't go into the technical details, but it requires building out a huge database, comparing the entries, misspellings, all that stuff. So we haven't built that. We don't have a plan to build that right now. I know that that's something that has been oft requested and would be useful, but it's just not something that we have on our roadmap at this stage.
As Molly knows, we use the current widget as a sort of API. Will we lose that on 422?
Whose question?
Jonathan Butler.
Yes. No, you will not lose that. The API will still be available to you. It's probably, depending on your implementation, and Jonathan, you and I should talk about this, but depending on your implementation, nothing should change. As long as you're building your own front end and calling the same API endpoints, nothing should change. The API has remained the same.
We've got a thank you. This looks so much better. Staff and listeners will be much happier.
Good, I'm so glad.
Awesome. Has the album art feature been updated to allow for it to display when you import a playlist from Music Master Selector or some other program?
Unfortunately not. We don't have that feature built into Composer. We have that feature in our backlog, but it's just not something we have planned right now.
Not sure exactly where to paste the daily playlist widget code into Core Publisher. Can that be answered in this webinar? I can probably answer that. If you are a Core Publisher station and you have the daily widget or don't have the daily widget now, what you can do is go to your actually, can you go back to the admin screen?
Yep. The widget admin?
Yeah. So you're talking about this schedule. This is actually on your /schedule page. So if you go to your website /schedule, you'll see the daily widget. There's an option there for the daily widget or the weekly view. So that's automatically included in your Core Publisher site. You don't have to do anything to add it. There are a lot of questions about importing and ingesting. We haven't, maybe Molly, you want to talk about it a little bit, but we haven't made changes to that at this time. We're specifically have been working extensively on the playlist widget, so there aren't any changes to import, export, or how things are brought in if you are using the API. So that might answer some of these questions here. Is there a way to show a link to purchase even if we do not have affiliate links?
That's a great question. I hadn't thought about that, but what comes to mind is the custom fields that we built last year. So I'm going to go out to the calendar and the playlist, the currently playing playlist. How about Molly's Mix? And I'm going to edit this episode. So let's say I wanted to put a link to Spotify or a link to a vendor that we don't support. You could use this custom field. The one thing I will say, since I haven't even thought about this before, but it's a great idea, is that I'm not sure that if you do put a URL in here, if it will actually transform into a link on display. So that's something you'd have to play around with. But this is something that you can put anything in. If you wanted to say Spotify link, that's fine. You can name it anything you want, and it'll show up on your widgets as long as you have configured it to do that.
Movement. I'm guessing that means it's movement included.
Let me go to a classical program. We are beholden to the metadata that comes through the archive music library. So if they include movement, then we will display it, but it's not given its own metadata field. That's because it's not consistently labeled that way from archive. So sometimes they'll put it into the title of the piece, sometimes they'll put it into the album field. So we're just basically dumping what they have given us for these particular fields into those fields on Composer. So movement sometimes shows up and sometimes doesn't. I know that's not the most satisfactory answer, but it's what we have.
For a repeat show, can the playlist be imported to avoid re-entering everything?
The way that you can do that currently is export the playlist and then re-import it into your new episode. So you can do that. You will lose the album artwork if you have album artwork on the original playlist.
Does a field display if it is empty, such as the custom field?
No, definitely not. I'm going to back that up. A field that is empty will not display if it's one of the default fields. So on this particular song, conductor is empty. It says add conductor here. Conductor would not show on your widgets if it was empty. As for the custom field, that is something I would have to test. If you put a label in for a custom field, so like I just showed you, add a field, and then we give you a label field and also a metadata field here. If you put a label in here, it will show, I think. But if you add this custom field and you don't put any metadata here, that's what I would need to test. And if that's the case, we should not let that happen. So thanks for bringing that up.
Can you ask if there are any music stations feeding playlist data into the API? I'd like to connect with them.
Yes, I do know of a couple. I would like to chat with them before I broadcast them their names here, just so that they are okay with me sharing that. I think they are. I've connected a couple stations in the past, but yes, we do have one or two stations who are doing some automatic ingest.
I have a couple of questions that are related to importing from different things, from different databases, from things like iTunes. As long as if you can export your playlist out of your current system in a CSV or text file, then you can use the import-export tool. So there isn't an automated way to do it. Like there's not a way that we're talking to certain systems, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So go take a look at the import options page in Composer. It'll tell you exactly how to configure an import file. Probably the people who are asking these questions already know that. As for a more custom solution, again, we do have the API. It does support ingest to some extent, but it's not something we've been focused on. So as I said, there are some stations who are doing it. I'm happy to put stations in touch with other stations to see what they're doing. I think there's some sample code floating around out there. But the API is not something we've been working on as of yet to get that automatic ingest at a place that's friendlier to use.
Any other questions? These are really good questions, by the way.
Yeah, and if we miss any questions, I'll be sure to go through and look at all the questions, and I'll either write up a blog post or else I will write up an FAQ to post somewhere just so that we're sure that we're covering all of our bases.
Can we add a custom field to imported playlists, or do we have to configure custom fields on cut-by-cut basis?
You can add a custom field to any playlist, and that includes imported playlists. Sounds like we might be getting close to the end of the questions.
Yeah. As a follow-up here, can you display now playing Encore Publisher Responsive Yet? This is a hold-up for us. So I think we had a question about this earlier on. Molly is going to double-check with the current product owner. You can't, what
I'll say towards that is I'm not sure in the current themes if you're able to do that without it being kind of a hack, but we are working on the persistent player, and I am in close touch with that team as they start to think about that and what it will look like and how it will function. And this is for the responsive theme. And we now, obviously, now playing information on the persistent player is a very important thing to discuss. So we are sharing what we've learned from all of you guys and from our research and from tickets that have been submitted with the core publisher team as they sort of think about their solutions over there for the persistent player.
You can submit a ticket, and like Molly said, there is possibly a hack that we can show you how to do. If you are interested in using the Now Playing widget in the responsive theme through a promotional block, that is a possibility. So go ahead and submit a ticket to our support center, and we can give you some information about that.
Cool. These are great questions. We should have invited Justin, our core publisher product owner, to this session.
Next time. Does the new Now Playing widget have a transparent background, or does it have a white background? There's also another question that asked if they have any control over CSS.
It has a white background. I'm going to say that with 90% certainty. But that is a really good question. You will not have control over the CSS for the Now Playing widget. It'll function exactly the same way as the old Now Playing widget functions, which is just that iframe. So you would have to write your own CSS around that iframe. You'd have to give it your own class and have targeted CSS for that. But if you're looking to do something around the Now Playing widget, get in touch with me and we can think that through. A transparent background does sound appealing. So let me ruminate on that one.
The revamp will no longer show Add Composer for Classical, correct? In the playlist, like it does now.
Are you seeing that? Well, if you're seeing the actual words Add Composer for a blank composer field in the playlist widget, that's a bug, and we should address that. Although I will say that we may not address it because we're just going to release these widgets, and that will not happen in these widgets. So I hope I answered your question. I think that might be a bug, but this release should resolve that issue.
We got some comments about it being an iframe.
Yes.
They can't control CSS in an iframe. That's very true.
Yeah, my stock answer to that is get in touch with me and we can talk about how to use the API. The API is your best bet for configurability and custom design. I know that's not necessarily a solution for everybody given resource constraints, and all of that. We tried to make the widgets as unobtrusively designed as possible. We tried to keep them kind of in line with how they were designed before, but I understand that that's frustrating.
All right, I think we're actually coming down to the end of the questions here.
Great.
Any others? Will there be something in the new Now Playing widget on the homepage that says playlist? Like a button, maybe?
A link out to the playlist widget. No, I don't. There will not be a link to the playlist widget. The only link that will exist in the Now Playing widget is if you have configured your program to have a URL in Composer, you can link to that program in your Now Playing widget.
And if you link to the program, then it will bring you to the program page, which has the playlist widget embedded on it. So
right, good point.
You should link to your programs, people. If you're not doing that already, you might want to take some time to go back in and add your program links.
Anything else? Are we pretty good?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, I guess that's a wrap, folks. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to get these out to you. As I said, next week is the launch date, and we will, of course, be sending an update around via email about that, and you'll hear more as these widgets go live. So I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks again.